You're listening to Franchise Interviews, and we're speaking with Jackie Jordan, Chris Gaba, and we're going to bring in Chris Simneck of Central Bark. And Central Bark has taken daycare to a whole new level with their unique whole dog care approach, which integrates a full range of fun services, specially balanced to nurture your dog's whole health, their physical, mental, and emotional well-being. These services and products adapt with your dog as they grow and develop, helping nurture and support them throughout their whole lifetime. And one of the questions our listeners like to ask on the show, Jackie and Chris, is, what is a typical day like for a Central Bark franchisee? I imagine, because it's a system, you're following the method and the processes and things like that, but I'm sure some days are a little bit different. But can you describe a typical day?
Well, the majority of the day is spent with the dogs. Your staff is with them. Check-in time is typically most people are checking in before they head to work, so between 7 and 8.
Okay.
And so the dogs are coming in, and they are all excited and happy to be there. We get them into their groups, who they're going to play with for the day, with their team leader, who's going to manage their activities. They will do some group activities. They'll do some individual activities. Some can choose to do what we call our training tutor program. So they get to go in and do some one-on-one activities with a specialist. The enrichment play activities, whether it's nap time or in small groups. Really, the dogs are just having a great time during the day, being mentally, physically, socially stimulated. And that goes on throughout the day. There's rest periods, downtime, that all dogs get because it's really important for the dogs. It's kind of like us as humans when we're completely exhausted.
Sure, of course.
Over the top exhausted. We're not happy. We're not good. We're not good.
Right. That's true.
We're not at our best. And that's the same thing with dogs. When they're overstimulated, overtired, they are not their best. And so we do have scheduled rest time so that the dogs, not all dogs will say, oh, I'm tired, I better go lay down. Most don't do that. So we have scheduled times where the dogs do have quiet time. And they may still do a puzzle activity during their quiet time, or they may just rest, depending on the dog. And then if they're not resting, then they're back out playing and learning and exercising and socializing. And then towards the end of the day, when mom and dad are done with their day, they come and pick up their dogs and they go home, and they're a happy tired, not exhausted, I'm cranky tired. And that's what we believe is the best for the dogs, and it's all science based as well. That just like I said, cranky tired is not a good tired.
I think it's important, Jackie, isn't it? Because I think I was mentioning to you last time I interviewed you many years ago. I know of some of my neighbors where, unfortunately, their dogs are in the house all day, and they might have somebody come just walk the dog, take them out for 15 minutes, and then they're back in the house all day. So when the owners get home, that dog's probably ready to play, aren't they? They're just like so excited, and but when you come home from a long day, you're just like, oh God, I want to just have something to eat and kind of unwind a bit, and the dog wants to play, so it's such a wonderful service. What advice would you give to our listeners in their quest to buy a franchise? And this is where I think I'll have to bring Chris Simneck in, because Chris has been involved in franchising very long time. But, as all of you know, it seems like there's more out there than ever in the world of franchising. When I first got involved in it, there was they said 1,500 systems. And now I think we're up to 2,500 or 3,000 different systems. So for our listeners, it seems like most of them are confused in the beginning. They don't even know where to begin. And if someone has a background in corporate America, maybe they never would have even thought of considering something like Central Bark because they just didn't know about it. What advice would you give to our listeners then in their quest to buy a franchise? And that question's open to anybody.
I would say that franchising is one of those businesses that it's for the individual who wants to be in business for themselves, and not by themselves.
Right.
They don't want to reinvent the wheel. We use a phrase called intrapreneur, right? Not entrepreneur so much.
Right.
I think that oftentimes people who have maybe the top end C-suite experience aren't used to doing things for themselves. They're used to people that having to do them. So knowing the skill sets that they have and how they can adapt to a model like Central Bark is pretty critical. We use a phrase at Central Bark that passion and profits go hand in paw, right? So the idea that we like the passion for business and the passion for the pets. But I will tell you that the diversity and the flexibility of the model has allowed people from all walks of life. We have accountants, we have politicians, we have attorneys, we have bankers. So husband and wives, individual franchisees, multiple owner franchisees. I think that type of flexibility speaks well not only to Central Bark but to franchising as a whole.
That diversity adds, right, as you said, Chris, and it really does add to the franchise, doesn't it? As you said, having accountants and politicians and husbands and wives, and it certainly, adds to the whole mix and the culture of Central Bark. And, I've always wondered, Jackie and Chris, have you ever got ideas from your franchisees? I know like some franchisors are like open, it's like when you have, your annual meetings and things like that. I imagine maybe over the years, you probably got some interesting advice from some of your franchisees. Has that ever happened where they said, could we do things this way or should we do things that way? Has that ever occurred?
Absolutely. And some of our great ideas that we incorporate today came from franchisees.
Yeah.
So, it is interesting when people come on board for they're brand new to the system. They they have all these great ideas and they say, well, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this, and some of them or a lot of them we have done and found that they didn't work for one reason or another.
Right.
But we just explain why that is or what our experience is.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we've definitely gotten some great ideas from our franchisees.
That's great. So what are Central Bark's plans for the future, Jackie, Chris, and Chris? I mean, if you can look into that crystal ball and say, what's the next 3 to 5 years look like? How would you describe that?
Well, we've always said that we don't necessarily need to be the biggest, but we want to be the best.
Right.
And so it's really important to us to have a good ratio of open to sold stores so that we're not just selling like crazy and not getting people open. So we want to make sure that we have the resources and to sell to new people and then get them open in a timely manner. So our goal is to have 40 sold by the end of this year and 50 by the end of next year.
Any other closing points before we
I believe so, Marty. Someone who's looking at franchising or particularly the pet care industry, I think there are some key differentiators. Central Bark has the 1 day a week requirement, which not only helps from a safety standpoint. You want to let your child go. You want your child to go to a different class every day and have different students and different friends every day, right? That consistency.
Right. That makes sense.
The idea of play and stay. Our ratio of dogs to staff is 12 or 15 to 1, which means the one-on-one time. But it's also good from a revenue model. When you know how many dogs are coming, when you know how to staff things, good business decisions also. So you want to make sure that you balance both those out. Our timeline to open is 6 to 12 months. So we always have conversations with people about their exit strategy, which many people don't discuss. Knowing what your end game is sure helps you develop your plan. And so knowing those things ahead of time are kind of important. And, I've been in franchising. This is my 39th year. And I always tease people and say, my four-legged children, Uh, they give me unconditional love. They don't talk back as much, and if you've ever changed diapers, I promise you they can be easier to pick up after.
Right.
And then but also the one thing about in the pet care industry is our dogs don't age out of doggy daycare. You know, if you're a child, you know, you're 3, 4, 5 years old, you move on. Our dogs are always our 2 and 3 year olds. They're always part of our needs. So the need for our product is lifelong and generational. We have franchisees, you know, that are in their 12th, 13th, 14th year that have had families that have now in their second or third pet member. So we I think there's a lot of exciting things and a very strong future to the system.
It's an amazing business model. You know, Chris, I've been doing this a long time, and you know, my passion has really been, you know, studying all the different franchise models, and you know, I've always been very impressed, particularly with the rebranding of Central Bark. I think it's really a very exciting time in the organization. So, how can our listeners get more information on Central Bark, Jackie? Would you like them to go to the website, and I'm talking from the franchise perspective, and even the service itself? What websites can our listeners go to?
They can go to Central Bark USA and get information about franchising. They can get information about centers that may be close to them that if they want to bring their dogs in. Absolutely, it's a wealth of information there.
That's terrific. And I want to thank all three of you, Chris, and Jackie, for coming on the show. It's been a privilege for me to speak to you again.